Coming up is one of the greatest movies ever made according to a lot of critics. It's in top 100 lists of greatest movies ever made. Out of Japan, it's Sansho the Bailiff. Let's review this movie and analyze it. I'm going to give you a lot of information about it that will be helpful if you've seen it or not seen it. Coming up next. Sansho the Bailiff is a beloved movie, has been a long time, by the great Japanese master director Mizoguchi. Sansho the Bailiff has a lot of accolades. It did in its day when it was released in 1954. It still does today. I think anybody could deeply appreciate Sansho the Bailiff as a movie, and it is a moving experience for most people. I think one of the reasons why is this is the rare film that is culturally translatable and easily so. Yes, this is a particularly Japanese movie, but it's also available to you wherever you are, whatever your life circumstances. Partly that's because the movie is archetypal and it announces itself as such. Sansho the Bailiff is deliberately a historical film, almost a folklorish film set in what it calls the Japanese Dark Ages before people had advanced. But don't let that trick you, because any movie about the past is also about the present. And this is certainly about the 20th century, this movie Sansho the Bailiff. The archetypal storyline, or at least the archetypes in it, are a young boy and his sister are exiled. They are actually part of a family. They are the son and daughter of a nice and noble lord who tells them that all people are created equal, and he tells them to be merciful and gives them the household goddess of mercy. They are exiled and they have to go away with their mother to flee for safety reasons. But as they go on their journey with their mother, these two children are sold into slavery, separated from their mother forever. They end up under the household of the slave owner, Sansho the Bailiff, and they are treated to a lot of wickedness and terrible things that slavery in general, no matter what kind of slavery, this movie depicts Japanese slavery in particular in the so-called Dark Ages, but clearly anybody in any culture can sort of see this and understand their own historical past. For example, Americans clearly see in this movie, I think, the historical past of slavery, the familiar types or tropes of the overseer and the headmaster and the slaves who want to escape. The two children grow up over 10 years, and that 10 years has changed one of them, the boy, Zushio. He wants to serve the slave master, and he becomes hardened. He says there's no need for mercy. You should be beholden to the slave master and do his bidding in order to thrive. His sister, Anju, disagrees. She believes in mercy, what their father taught them over and over again.
年寄りの額に平気で焼きごとを当てたりして兄さんは何とも思わないの？あんなむごたらしいこと平気でできるの？お父様の言葉はどうしたんです？懐の観音様に恥ずかしくないの？
Now, at one point in the movie, Zushio, the hardened brother, he decides, I will run away with my sister, except their plan to run away is, well, it's sort of foiled. The sister decides, I'm going to save him, I'm going to let my brother escape, and then I'm going to take the blame for it. I'm going to cover for him. The result of that is, I think, the most moving scene, maybe in Japanese cinema, to me at least, which is where the sister and the brother, they're separated, and then she has to commit, or she decides to commit suicide, going into a lake and drowning in order to cover for her brother's escape attempt. This brother ends up at a Buddhist monastery and is cared for, and he himself becomes a lord because he's got the household goddess and he's got a letter confirming that he is the son of the ex-great lord, who it just so happens the governor these days knows. Unfortunately for Zushio, his father has died, and now he's on the way to look for his mother. Now, I won't tell you any more than that, although later in the video, and I'll warn you, there will be spoilers. But this sort of overview, as I watch this movie, I think of all kinds of stories and all kinds of texts that I know well The Bible, for example, comes up for me. And it's not that this movie is related to these texts, it's just that there's this general sweep, or as I said, archetypal storytelling in this movie that connects with stories from all over the world. So the Bible, for example, the stories about slavery and redemption come up here. The one that comes up for me as well is the Aeneid, the great ancient Roman epic, passing on the household god from father to son or daughter, and having the son or daughter, take that household god and live out what it means to be merciful, but also to carry around that little, idol or icon is, classic Aeneid. To me, it's one of the highlights of the Aeneid. And I think if you watch this movie, whatever your experience is, you're going to see, whether you're not religious at all, whether you're Hindu, it doesn't matter what religion or traditional background, you won't see this as a Japanese movie. You'll see this as a human movie. Now, there's a lot of mysteries in this movie, one of them being why it's titled Sansho the Bailiff. I will try to forward you with some answers, although they aren't the only answers. I think one of the reasons this movie is titled Sansho the Bailiff is it wants to highlight positions of power and abuses of power, something that a lot of Japanese New Wave movies do. For example, in Kurosawa or Masako Kobayashi, there's a bunch of these Japanese directors after World War II who highlight the problems with abuses of power, particularly political power. And Sansho the Bailiff, in his power over the slaves, he's a very harsh and cruel person, and he doesn't understand what human being means. He doesn't certainly heed the father of the two children in this story, and they're clearly counterpoints. Sansho the Bailiff versus the father of these two children, who says everyone should be equal, everyone should be treated equally, they're created equally, we should all be merciful to everyone. Sansho the Bailiff is the opposite of that. Now, this movie wants to highlight the abuses of power in the power structure of master-slave, for example, even by extension employer-employee or master-servant. Same kind of dynamics with father or son, same kind of dynamics with brother-sister, perhaps, although brother and sister are equals. And of course, 20th century viewers, even 21st century viewers like yourself, can relate this to basically any kind of political office, any kind of political position, and the threat of power being abused is a typical human problem. So it's not so much that we've exited the dark ages as the opening intertitle of the movie would have it. I think this movie is searing, telling us about how today, in this day and age, although you might not see in your own place in the world slavery overtly, it might be there, say, mentally. It might be there, say, politically. And you'll always have the threat of slavery because humans love to abuse each other if they get the chance and if they're particularly vicious. And in the movie, of course, Zushio, once he escapes slavery, he gets to become a lord. And the question is whether he will become like Sansho the Bailiff or like his father, or maybe there's a third choice. And the movie, gives you those possibilities, lays them out before you. Should you keep power or forsake it? One of the great themes, this is 1954, one of the great themes of a book series released right at this time, Lord of the Rings. The idea that you should drop the Ring of Power in a volcano or get rid of this Ring of Power. Don't take it because it will ruin you and it will ruin everything. Now, one reason this movie is great is the compositions. Shot for shot, you can analyze this for hours. This video could go on for hours. There are so many beautiful shots, haunting shots, and as a lot of critics have commented, the scenery is the star. But there's lots of scenery. There's forests, there's temples, there's houses, there's beaches, and Mizoguchi has clearly planned every shot and every detail and every shot out well. If you are an aspiring director, you ought to see this movie, but if you like the movie, you ought to study it. I think not only the compositions and the cinematography, but the editing is beautiful. And one of my favorite moments in this movie is when the sister goes into the lake or pond to commit suicide to save her brother, but you don't see her enter the pond. You just see the ripples on the surface of the water. And the cut goes from the pond with the ripples to a Buddhist temple. And there's a very interesting connection there between the water as a transitional place on the houses of the dead, or the sister becoming a dead spirit, going in the spirit world, and then the Buddhist temple her brother escapes to. It's a wonderful cut, but there are lots of them. Many of these in this movie. Wonderful camera movements as well. Mizoguchi, as I said, is a master director, and he deserves to be studied by us still today. So this is where I want to analyze the movie, and I'm going to give you a spoiler alert. One of the great shots in this movie is the opening shot, which is commented on endlessly by critics. I think the closing shot is very important, and that's why I have to spoil some things for you. I just said that water is a transitional space, certainly in the scene where the sister commits suicide. Mizoguchi sets up these compositions where you see the land meeting the water, and this is a transitional space between the hard, unmoving surface of the land and then the water, which is always constantly moving and churning, or you can go into it and move around in it, versus the land, which is not, so you can't move around in land. So in this movie, at several key points, in fact, the transition points in the story where the mother and the children are separated, let's say, you have this land and water meeting. Same thing with, obviously, the sister committing suicide, but also at the end. At the end of the movie, as you know if you've seen it, Zushio, as a grown man who's become a lord but has forsaken his place, meets his mother. Finally, the mother comes back. Her song has been haunting the whole movie. The idea that the mother is still out there, willing to be found, and longing for her children has been hanging around the whole movie. Finally, he meets her where? At a transition space, and to me this is a spiritual idea, on the beach, at a place right between where the land and the sea meet. Is the sea representative of the spiritual world? Maybe not exactly, but I think in a few ways it might actually be, especially given what I just told you. It's a place where the sister commits suicide, and then it cuts right into the Buddhist temple. As well, you have this space right here where you see in the final shot the mother and the son, and then out there is that ever-moving, ever-changing sea. Also yin and yang ideas come up with land and sea, with this thing that nature or people and everything in the universe always changes. That's, to me, what the sea is. And you get this redemptive moment, when the son actually comes back to the mother, and the mother says, "You have lived as your father wanted you to. You've been a man of mercy. And that's how I know that you are you, and that everything is reasonably well." She's become a blind woman, unfortunately, and an old woman, but they are reunited. The final shot, though, cuts back to a long shot, maybe even an extreme long shot, and the camera, why does it move back to the left? Why does it move to the position where Zushio came from? He enters the scene in order to see his mother from this left side. He goes to the right, there she is, but then the camera goes back. It also shows us more of the sea, and it shows us at the bottom a man who Zushio has talked to, and the man tells him about a tsunami that's killed a bunch of people. And that's one of the ideas in this movie about fate, obviously, that you can't control your fate. You can to the extent that you can, but when a tsunami comes and kills you, that's it. Just as in this movie, when the people are sold into slavery, when the children are sold into slavery, same kind of idea. How are you going to deal with the fact that life sucks, that suffering is going to happen, trials are going to happen, and the worst is going to happen, and you can't undo it? That is, you're going to lose your father forever, and there's no overturning that. You can't get your sister back. She committed suicide. She's dead. And so this movie deals very seriously with the notion and the truism that we all suffer. And we all are going to suffer serious things, that we're going to lose something, whether it's a pet or worse, a human, a relative, a friend, and so on, our spouse, our children. What are we going to do about it? Because they're just gone, and they're gone forever. This movie reminds us of that by going back to the left. Zushio and his mother have, I suppose, completed their character arc, their journey arc, story arc at the end of this movie. But then the gesture of the camera going back to the left tells us as viewers we're going backwards. We're maybe going back in time, or back to a more, nebulous space where we ourselves are dealing with the churning, nature of life. where we ourselves have to deal with problems and trials and suffering. Yes, the two characters, especially Zushio, has completed his journey, but you, viewer, you have to go back to yours, and you're looking now at the transition space. You're going to go into that water at one point. You're going to die, right? You're also going to transition from this world into, in Shintoism, this is Japanese, to the next world, like the sister did in this movie. So what are you going to do about that? The movie is extremely interested in your ethical response to it. Now, I think that's why a lot of critics, and famously Anthony Lane is one of them, if you go look this up in the New Yorker, said, well, I saw the movie once, and I'll never see it again because it broke me when I walk out of the movie theater. And I want to retain that experience of being broken by it, but I also think, it's so hard to deal with this movie more than once. Because the movie is trying, I think, and it does very well, Mizoguchi is excellent at breaking you and making you have that ethical choice. I think that's one of, dozens of reasons why the camera moves back to the left there to show you the little man on the beach who spoke about the tsunami, and then the beach, and then the ocean far away going and into the horizon. So wonderful, wonderful closing shot. One of the best ever, I think. Now, I've not said very much about this movie because, as I said, we could spend hours on it. What have you seen in Sansho the Bailiff that is of interest to you? What do you think of this movie? What shots stick out at you? Why is this movie, why do you love this movie? Those are the questions I'm interested in. If you wouldn't mind commenting and telling us those answers, let's compile them and see if this movie still has its impact 60 years later and still has impact worldwide. Thank you very much. Please subscribe to my channel for more great movie content, and I greatly appreciate all of you subscribers and viewers. Thank you very much. Have a great day.